Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for making the time to be here. As most of you know, my name is Zoe Green, and I am one of the Year 4 teachers here at Grovedale Primary School. Recently, our school community has welcomed a new family, Elena in Year 6, and twins Giorgio and Luca, who have joined my Year 4 class. Luca has a dual diagnosis of low vision and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD for short. Today, I want to share how we can ensure he and every child participates fully and equitably in our classrooms, and to open a conversation about moving our school from a segregated model to a truly inclusive one. When Luca's family enrolled, they were surprised to learn he would be separated from Giorgio and placed in the unit. This decision reflects the treatment schools with disabilities receive, that they are not welcome in mainstream schools and belong elsewhere. A practice often described as gatekeeping. But Luca is more than his diagnosis. He is curious, loves science experiments, and enjoys storytelling, and is a creative problem solver. With enlarged text, visual supports, and movement breaks, he can thrive. Inclusion benefits all learners. When schools design for diversity, every student experiences greater belonging and participation. To make an informed case for inclusion, it is important to understand Luca's profile without framing it through a deficit lens. Low vision refers to reduced visual perception or field of vision, where glasses are no longer sufficient, making tasks like reading standard print or interpreting visuals difficult. In the classroom, low vision students may have difficulty accessing standard print, reading text on the board, or adapting to different lighting. However, with appropriate supports, students with low vision can participate in the full curriculum alongside their peers. Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, ADHD, is a neurodevelopment condition characterized by differences in attention span, impulse control, and self-regulation. Students with ADHD often bring into the classroom creativity, energy, and problem-solving skills, but may require support in sustaining attention, transitioning between tasks, and regulating behaviour. Crucially, both impairments must be seen through the social model of disability, which places responsibility for barriers on environment and systems rather than individuals. The medical model, in contrast, locates the problem within the child. If we default to the medical model, we risk practices of othering and ableism, where Luca is treated as fundamentally separate. An informed understanding means recognizing that these impairments are not deficits, and that our role is to provide adjustments so Luca can access learning on the same basis as his peers. Inclusion is not simply a choice. It is both a legal obligation and a moral commitment in Australian education. Historically, and even to this day, some students with disability are educated separately, either in special schools or in units attached to mainstream schools. The Salamanca Statement, 1994, was a global turning point affirming that all children should learn together, regardless of ability. Australia has since embedded this principle into law and policy. The Disability Standards for Education 2005, the DSE, clarify the obligations educators under the Disability Discrimination Act 1992 DDA. The DSE seek to ensure that students with disability can access and participate in education on the same basis as students without disability. This means that as a school, we must follow the standards and respect Luca in the same way. More recently, the Alice Springs Education Declaration 2019 places students in the centre and promotes equality, equity, and excellence as core values, recognising diversity as a strength that enriches all learners. Inclusive education aligns with principles of social justice by dismantling systematic barriers and resisting practices of gatekeeping, where access is restricted based on assumptions of capability. This evolution highlights a clear path. Segregation is outdated, integration is insufficient, and full inclusion is the standard. Australia's commitment is not just compliant with international conventions, such as the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 2006, but also a recognition that inclusive schools develop belonging, participation, and achievement for all students. The existence of a separate unit at our school reflects a model of education that no longer aligns with Australia's legal, ethical, or educational commitment. Segregated settings are rooted in the medical model of disability, which frames students like Luca as problems to be fixed, rather than as learners to be supported. This approach maintains ableism and othering, as it positions difference as deficiency. In contrast, the social model of disability understands that barriers arise from environments, physical, pedagogical, and attitudinal, not from the child themselves. When we separate students based on impairment, we enact gatekeeping, limiting equitable participation and reinforcing exclusion, directly contradicting the Disability Standards for Education 2005, which mandate that students with disability must be able to access learning on the same basis as their peers. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability 2006 further affirms education as a human right, requiring countries to ensure inclusive systems at all levels. From a social justice perspective, maintaining separate units perpetrates inequality and systematic barriers, denying students like Luca their right to fully participate, dismantling structures that privilege some and marginalise others. Inclusion is not about placement, it is about participation, belonging, and voice. Closing the unit is not about removing support, it is about redistributing expertise. The skills of specialist teachers and aides currently in the unit can be integrated into co-teaching models, supporting classroom teachers to differentiate effectively for every learner. Ultimately, our goal is not simply to include Luca, but to transform the system so that every child, regardless of ability, is welcome, valued, and supported to thrive within the same community. When we move towards genuine inclusion, every stakeholder benefits, not only Luca. Bronfenbrenner's biological model reminds us that Luca's growth is influenced by a network of interacting systems, from his immediate relationships with family and peers to the broader social and educational context. Attending to these multiple voices enables us to create inclusive learning environments that are genuinely supportive, equitable, and grounded in connection. For Luca, being part of the Year 4 class provides consistent access to peers, routines, and the full curriculum. Research consistently shows that students with disability in inclusive settings experience stronger academic and social outcomes than those in segregated environments. Luca will develop a sense of belonging, identity, and agency learning with and from his peers, rather than being positioned as different or other. For Giorgio, Luca's twin, it means learning alongside her brother, a key factor in family well-being and sibling connection. Their parents too experience the relief of seeing both children share the same educational journey, developing trust and confidence in our school's commitment to equality. Their voices reflect the importance of shared learning and the emotional impact of inclusive practices. For peers, inclusive classrooms promote empathy, respect for diversity, and collaborative learning. Students learn to see diversity as normal, not exceptional, a foundation for a more inclusive society. Including students like Luca strengthens peer understanding and models respect for differences. From the perspective of teachers and allied health professionals, inclusion offers professional growth through collaboration, differentiation, and reflective practice. Working alongside learning support staff, allied health professionals, and families strengthens collective capability, directly supporting APST Standard 7. At the school and community level, inclusion advances principles of social justice and cohesion. Schools become a part of the equitable society we aim to build, where every learner participates on the same basis and no one is excluded because of difference. Luca faces barriers that are not caused by his impairments, but our learning environment is constructed. This is the essence of the social model of disability. These barriers include inaccessible resources, rigid pedagogies, and ableism. the implicit assumption that normal ways of seeing, learning, behaving are superior. For Luca, low vision makes it difficult to read standard text or view board work, while ADHD can make sustained focus challenging in unstructured or overstimulating environments. The danger is that teachers may other him by setting lower expectations or removing him from class, reinforcing gatekeeping rather than inclusion. To support Luca on the same basis as his peers, as required by the Disability Standards for Education, we must apply evidence-based differentiation and universal design for learning principles. Key strategies include environmental adjustments such as improved lighting, high contrast resources, or reduced clutter. Instructional differentiation can be verbal explanations of visual content, chunked tasks, use of visuals and audio. Assessive technologies could be magnification tools, text-to-speech, or audio books. Predictable routines and visual schedules could be to reduce the cognitive load and support self-regulation. Collaborative goal setting with Luca and his parents to ensure adjustments match his strengths and preferences. These approaches remove barriers for Luca and for others. They demonstrate inclusive differentiation and support redesigning the learning environment, not redesigning the learner. When a parent expresses concern that Luca's inclusion will take time or focus away from normal students, it is essential to respond with empathy, clarity, and professionalism. I would begin by confirming their care for their child's learning and acknowledging their concern. I understand that you want to make sure every child receives the attention they deserve. Then I would explain that inclusive education is not about lowering expectations or diverting resources, but about designing teaching and learning so that all students can access, participate, and achieve on the same basis as required under the Disability Standards for Education. I would emphasize that differentiation benefits every learner. The strategies that support Luca, such as multimodal teaching, visual supports, and flexible pacing, enhances engagement and understanding for the whole class. This is supported by research showing that inclusive education strengthens outcomes for all students, not just those with disabilities. I would also address the underlying issue of ableism and othering. When we label some children as normal and others as different, we unintentionally spread exclusion and inequality. Our goal as educators is to create a classroom where difference is seen as a strength, not a deficit. Finally, I would reassure the parent that inclusion is a collaborative process. Support staff, allied professionals, and I will work together to ensure Luca's needs are met while maintaining high-quality learning experiences for every child. As I conclude, I return to the heart of this issue. Inclusive education is not simply about where a child learns. It is about how we as a community value every learner. Closing the separate unit is not about removing support. It is about redistributing it, embedding expertise, collaboration, and differentiation into every classroom so all students, including Luca, can learn and belong together. Australia's policy frameworks, from the Disability Standards for Education to the Melbourne Declaration on Educational Goals for Young Australians and the Disability Discrimination Act, commit us to equitable access and participation. These frameworks are grounded in the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which recognises education as a human right, not a privilege. To maintain separate spaces for learners with disabilities is to disseminate gatekeeping and other practices that contradict our national and moral obligations. Thank you for listening.